Hello again, Zach Wilson, Hood County Chess Club here. I hope you're enjoying our series on attacking the king with fundamental checkmate patterns that you must know to begin attacking and winning. We're going to continue today with a checkmate pattern called Greco's mate. And this was established, 1600s, so a little over 400 years ago. And let's go ahead and get started with the first example on the screen, and then we'll look at this checkmate pattern in action in the middle of games. Okay, so we can see Black's castle position has a breach. And what I mean by that is they've moved their f-pawn. And beginners are often told that positionally you should never move your f-pawn. Now eventually you'll discover how to play positional chess, you'll study your openings, you'll understand your middle game attacking plans, and you'll know when to move your f-pawn and when not to move your f-pawn. But here's the reason why you don't want to move your f-pawn without a good reason. I want you to notice the light squared bishop and how it's attacking into the king's castled area. So essentially we've kind of opened the door and there's a breach in the castled position. So white wants to be able to take advantage of this. Now throughout each of the examples, I want you to remember one pattern and what it looks like. These three squares will not be available to the enemy king, and it looks kind of like a corridor mate or an edge of board mate kind of turned sideways. A back rank mate normally would look like these three, and the checkmate would come along the back rank somehow. And if you haven't seen the corridor mate video, please check that out on our YouTube channel as well. But this one is this direction, and we see that the bishop's covering that square, and the pawn is filling this square. So what we really want to know is if the bishop has that one, and the pawn is occupying that one, then how do we get this square covered so that we can deliver checkmate down the H file? Well, let's take a look at this. White can move his knight, sacrificing it. You can see that the king is in check, has nowhere to run. The only way to get out of this checkmate is to capture. Well, now you can see those squares are occupied, so black can't use them as an escape square. And I hope you can easily see the win here, rook to H1, checkmate. So take a good look at this, memorize it. This is what we're going to see in each of the game examples. All right, let's move forward. So first published in the year 1619 by Gioachimo Greco. We're just going to call him Greco because it's easier to say. He gave this game as an example of his mating pattern that he was sharing with other chess players at the time. And since then, this has become a fundamental staple in attacking plans. So we have a typical king's pawn opening. And from here, we don't know what opening to call it. If the light squared bishop attacks the knight, it's the Ruy Lopez. If it comes to c4 attacking f7, then it's the Italian game. And that's what we have here, the Italian game. A popular response is for black to bring his bishop out. And you can see that both sides are attacking the weakest square in the enemy position. So these moves are fairly normal. Attacking the center, getting ready to castle, and this move is awesome because it brings a double attack on the weakened square. Black is forced to respond. It's simply handled for now by castling. Now, this is a bad move by black. He's hoping to chase away this knight with this pawn. However, we saw in an earlier example that for this checkmate pattern to work, we want to be able to attack down the H file. So if black wants to take this knight, that might be an okay thing because it gives us an attacking prospect. So instead, we support that knight with a pawn. Well, let's see what happens. If he takes the knight and we recapture with the pawn, we've already achieved step one of our goal, which is there is a hole or a breach in black's castle position. Our rook is already attacking for a portion of this mating pattern. Of course, he has to save his knight. The queen comes to attack, and just look at this. Rook and queen coming down, and also queen and bishop on the f7 square. We have a double threat here. Black tries to make room for his king to run, and so this is a very important technique here. It's used in several attacking motifs. If you want to take a moment and pause the video and figure out what white's move should be, go ahead and figure that out now. But hopefully what you see here is queen captures f7, protected by the bishop. The reason for this is to get rid of this pawn. Remember, part of this attacking concept was that These three squares were going to be unavailable. Our mating attack's coming down the H-file. And this bishop is covering the breach in the position. So the queen has created this opportunity for the bishop to attack. King has to step back into the corner. He's got nowhere else to go. And now we can sacrifice the rook. We can sacrifice the rook simply because the queen operates like a rook. And here you can see the mate is complete. The bishop, this bishop, is covering this square. This pawn is occupying this square. The queen is covering that square. I hope you can see that. And then the queen is also delivering the checkmate. Okay, let's see another example. This was Johnson versus the famous Frank Marshall in the year 1899. And this is a queen's pawn opening, so we can see that it doesn't matter which way you go, king's pawn or queen's pawn. We're still looking at the basic ideas here. And at this point in your openings, if you're studying openings, black here has a choice between the Tarrasch defense or following the main line of the queen's gambit declined. But this was 1899. They were still making mistakes in opening theory back then, and instead brings his knight out, blocking in his c-pawn. That's just not a good idea. Black really needs that c-pawn moving to c5 as a pawn break. So white continues to develop sensibly. And normally in this position, let's take that move back for a moment. Normally, in a queen's gambit declined game, white wants to bring his bishop to g5, pinning this knight so that when these captures happen, this knight cannot participate. But instead he goes bishop f4, which is more often seen in a Slav defense. And so in response to typical Slav fashion, bishop to d6 and bishop to g3. And this might seem strange to you. Why not just capture? Why did he pull it back here? Well, it's here because if black decides to capture this bishop, then white can recapture, opening that all-important H-file. So in theory, if black knows this attacking plan, then white's bishop is safe. He's not going to want to capture. He doesn't want to open up that H-file until maybe white has castled, moving this rook off of the H-file. So centralizing your knight, that's always good. We just continue to develop sensibly. Castles, bishop to d3, where else? And now black's attempting a stonewall formation, which was a real popular defense in the early 20th century, but it does have one weakness, and it is this diagonal. He's opened up his king, he's created a breach. The f-pawn does create weaknesses, even though it does support the center. So you have to take the good with the bad. We're just simply protecting. And anytime white moves his c4 pawn in the opening, you can pretty much bet that there's going to be a battle down the c-file. And so rook to c1 is a very common maneuver for that reason. And now white is opening up the position. With that capture, you can see this diagonal is becoming more and more suspicious. And here it is. That diagonal has been completely emptied of the pawns. Now, black thinks he's found a tactic here. If you take a look, this white knight is undefended. Anytime that you see... Apparently Siri wants to help. Anytime you see an undefended piece, you should think, is there a tactic here? So black takes a free pawn, revealing an attack on the undefended piece. But white simply protects, but not just protecting, but also developing a X-ray attack against black's king that's also could be revealed as a double check attack, which is very powerful. So black gets rid of his piece, doesn't want to leave it under attack. He does so with check, so we're forced to respond. But we respond in a way that creates yet another threat. So here's happened. Our bishop's been taken, and we have the opportunity to open up our H-file for attack. But we're going to hold on to that for a moment. Just because you can doesn't necessarily mean you should do it immediately. So first we give our double check. You can see that the knight is checking, the bishop is checking. Anytime you are double checked, you only have one escape, which is to run away. Because with one move, you cannot capture two pieces, nor can you block both attacks. So black has to run to the corner, which is his only opportunity. We have achieved step one, the breach covered by the bishop. Step two is to get this corridor to happen, and this pawn seems to be in the way. And step three, is to capture so that we can attack down that corridor. So this might be a great place to pause the video and decide how you would proceed next. Keep in mind that forcing moves is always good. One of the ways we find a great forcing move is to cause check. Well, hopefully you found the move if you pause the video. By causing check, black must respond. He's in check, he can't run away, so we must capture the offending piece, and we've achieved step 2. The corridor has been made and defended by the bishop. All we need now is to be able to say check down the h-file. Capturing the knight, black has 1 defense, which is easily thwarted, and we can see Greco's mate. All right, on to the next game. Grunfeld versus Torre in 1925. If you're recognizing some of these names, these are famous chess masters whose attacking plans and popular opening theories now bear their names because they, well, discovered them and made them popular. So Grunfeld, of course, is famous for the Grunfeld defense. Torre has the Torre attack in the London system with white. So here we go. All right. This looks more like an Indian defense. Let's do something here. I think, give me just a moment, we're going to flip the board and see this from black's position. Most of the times when you get puzzle books or videos, everything's from white's position, and I think black doesn't get enough respect for counterplay, so let's take a look at it this way. Remember, Grunfeld is playing the white pieces, Torre is playing the black pieces, which is kind of funny considering Grunfeld's name is on a black defense and Torre's name is on a white attack. Here they're in opposite roles. So e6 is pretty popular to bring the bishop out on a very good diagonal. And it looks more like a bit of a Dutch defense with this F move here. So we'll just continue making a few moves. We see again that popular stonewall. And we'll just keep making the moves. We're not going to worry about opening theory too much. We're just going to wait till we get to the critical position. And everybody's centralizing and slowly making their maneuvers. Okay, white has made an error. Again, moving that f-pawn. Now you might think, well, black moved his f-pawn also, but it's a matter of who can take advantage of it. Both sides have weakened their king position. So now, by moving, let's take that move back for just a moment. Black's goal in attacking this central knight, other than just getting rid of a powerful central outpost, is to draw this pawn. Because take a look at now the open diagonal. And there's the check we've been waiting for. The diagonal is open, the king is in trouble, step 1. Okay? Well, here's that knight sacrifice. Forcing white to respond, excuse me. And there's only one way to respond. He has to take, and now we can see it. Covered by the bishop, occupied, occupied. Queen says check, the only block available, and checkmate. So you can see that even black has opportunities to do this. Well, there is a variation available to Greco's mate, and let's take a look at that. The variation is moving this queen here. I want you to notice that the queen and the knight are simultaneously attacking the pawn in front of the king, and the bishop, of course, has the usual attack covered in the breach. And this time, black has a different defense. He simply pushes the pawn forward, threatening this knight. Of course, right now it's pinned, so it can't do anything. White reinitiates or reinstates the threat by simply moving to the side. But now black has an easy defense. Just take the knight. Unfortunately, that opens things up to checkmate. And again, we can see here that the bishop is covering, occupied, queen covering. The queen, unlike a rook, has the ability to cover a runaway square and give the checkmate. So let's see that in our final example. And this game was played in 1941. I'm not familiar with the players, just the initials NN for the white player and V with the last name Khan. And we have a king's pawn opening. This time we have the 4 knights defense in the Scotch. And again, I'm not going to go over too much opening theory. We're just going to move through this game. It only lasted 13 moves, so we're going to get to the critical position quite quickly. And we can see here already that some interesting things are happening. We have a bishop that would like to be here. We have a knight that can maybe sacrifice itself or cause an issue with this pawn. We're hoping that we have a queen that can come over. And we want to make sure that those squares are occupied or covered. Okay. White should know better and willingly opens up the deadly diagonal. So before you make a move with your f-pawn and open up your king's position, you should be thinking about Greco's mate and making sure that it's not a threat. White did not do this. So black positions his queen. And right now we're looking at a deadly attack. So what's white to do? Typical response, trying to attack this knight and take away the queen's access. Okay. So we claim the deadly diagonal. Black has to shove his king, or excuse me, white has to put his king into the corner. Hopefully you paid attention in the previous. The queen takes its position. White's only hope is to remove one of the attacking pieces, and we have checkmate. Covered by the bishop, covered by the queen, occupied by the pawn, and there it is. So if we take a look at the previous variation, we can see what that looks like. And then we can go back to the winning position, and you can see it happens there. And of course, since black got the checkmate, it is always fun to see it from black's perspective. We'll take it back a couple of moves. He opened up the diagonal. We brought in our queen and knight. Definitely remember this as an attacking concept. We take the diagonal, we weasel our way in, and checkmate. Well, I hope you enjoyed learning about Greco's mate. I hope you get an opportunity to use it in your next game. Please visit us on Facebook and click the like button for Hood County Chess Club, and please subscribe to our channel. Until next time, this is Zach Wilson. We'll see you real soon.